Hi, I'm Pete, and welcome to Just a Few Acres Farm. Today we're talking about cattle and minerals. Do your cattle need supplemental minerals to be healthy? We started out like most farms do, just using a salt block that the cows could lick whenever they want. And then we graduated to a combination salt and mineral block. And then, as we learned more, we went to feeding loose mineral in a tub, which I'll show you in a minute. And latest, we've added protein tubs because I've been learning as I go, and I've been studying up on this issue for this video, and I want to share what I've learned. Please hit that button and subscribe to our channel for more great videos about small farm life, cattle, chickens, turkeys, and pigs. Thank you. This is our mineral feeder. It's a 3-compartment. It's covered with rubber. That's really important. The cows just stick their head in here when they want to get something. It's got 3 compartments in it, and I'll get to what mineral we put in those in a second, but it looks like they could use a little bit more. We all know that cattle need salt to stay healthy, but according to Drover's, a popular beef cattle website, cattle actually need 14 different minerals for proper health, and I'm going to have to read them off because I can't remember them all. They include calcium, copper, cobalt, iodine, iron, magnesium, manganese, molybdenum, don't even know how to pronounce that one, phosphorus, potassium, selenium, sodium, sulfur, and zinc. Furthermore, these minerals can be divided into macro and micro groups. When you look at a nutrition label on supplement, the macro groups are expressed in percentages, and these include things like calcium and phosphorus. The micro groups are expressed in parts per million, or ppm, and they include things like selenium and copper and lots of other minerals. Not only is the amount of each important, but to make things even more confusing, the proportion of each is important. Some minerals only uptake properly when they have the correct ratio to each other. Some or all of these minerals may be available in the cattle's forage, their hay and the grass in the summertime, but it's best to supplement to make sure they're getting enough. Many things can happen when cattle don't get the right amount of minerals. I'm most experienced with selenium deficiency. Selenium deficiency can cause reproductive problems in cattle, and we actually experience some of them. The cattle don't clean properly after they have their calves, and then they wind up with uterine infections. Selenium deficiencies can also cause the dreaded white muscle disease, where young calves don't get enough selenium and they're crippled by this deficiency. Mineral deficiencies can cause a whole host of other problems. It can cause cattle not to gain weight at the expected rate. It can cause mama cows to abort calves. It can cause ill health in young calves. It can result in unhealthy looking coats. It can cause rickets, grass tetany, milk fever. The list goes on and on. As I said, we started out using lick blocks. These blocks that are about this big square you get at any farm store. You can get salt or you can get a salt mineral mix. We learned as time went on that lick blocks just don't cut it. The cattle can't take up enough mineral to meet their needs. Cows like salt. That's why when you go out sometimes they lick your hand. In fact, when we used to feed lick blocks that were a salt and salt mineral mix, the cows would still lick our hands, and that was one of the signs to me that they weren't getting enough mineral. And as I did some reading, I found out it's a lot better to feed loose mineral. The other problem with using lick blocks is keeping them clean. When we used to use them, we would put them in a tray out in the pasture, but still the cows would poop on them. They'd knock them out of the tray or knock the tray over and wind up rolling them around in the dirt, and then they wouldn't lick them anymore, so they didn't work very well. Now we use a 3-compartment loose mineral feeder. It's got a nice rubber cover on it so that the weather doesn't get in. It's been durable. We've had it for about 3 years now, and the cows haven't torn it apart yet. They can't spill it or knock it over. In those 3 compartments we put salt, loose fine salt. This is Redmond salt. And then Fertrol NutriBalancer. This particular mix is Grazer's Choice, which is a good source of the macro minerals like calcium and phosphorus and some of the micro minerals. To supply the remainder of the micro minerals, we feed kelp, which is an amazingly rich source of a diverse array of different minerals. Titus. You want to see what goodies I put in there? Bulls will be bulls. All right, so at this point, I thought I had it all figured out. We were feeding all of those trace minerals that were recommended and giving them free choice to the cows so they could eat them whenever they wanted. Then the protein issue came along. Every year I noticed that the consistency of the cattle's manure changed when they went in for winter feeding. So in the summertime when they're eating live forage, it was the proper consistency, but in the winter it would really harden up and it would look like this, with ridges in it and a lot of fiber in it. And I wondered about that, so I started doing some research. So I started looking into the signs of cattle health via the appearance of their manure and found out about protein deficiencies. Cattle should be receiving between 10 and 14% protein in their forage. Now, excellent hay, alfalfa grass mix, is 14% protein. That's the best hay you can make. Lousy hay, say late first cutting hay, can be down to 4% protein. So what happens when cattle don't get enough protein? Well, they suffer in a number of ways. They don't grow as fast, and if they're pregnant, particularly in their third trimester, their calf suffers from that protein deficiency. Now, this protein requirement doesn't work the way you would intuitively think it does. If we had a protein deficiency, we could eat a steak and make up for it. But with cattle, it's not a direct relationship. There's a middleman, and that's a type of bacteria that lives in the rumen that needs protein to thrive and do its job. So when I was seeing that hard, ridgy manure, that was fibrous manure. The cow wasn't digesting fiber enough to get the needed nutrition out of it. And the reason that the cow wasn't digesting that fiber was because that bacterial population in their rumen was suffering from a lack of protein. They need protein to thrive and digest the fiber for the cattle. What this all boils down to is that unless you're feeding premium hay through the whole feeding season, you need to supplement with protein for optimal cattle health. Now, knowing about protein deficiency, we started putting out these 200-pound protein lick tubs. These are 24% protein derived from molasses and grain products. The cows love them when we put them out. They go to town on them. Out west, a lot of ranchers feed cake, which is similar stuff in pellet form that they spread across the pasture for the cows to eat. But here in the Northeast, it's most readily available in tub form. Our cattle will go through 2 of these 200-pound tubs every month, which equates to, when you do the math, a 1/4 pound per animal per day of this material. Since we started feeding this stuff, the manure's changed completely. There's no more fibrous manure. And here I thought that having fibrous manure in the winter was just a part of life when you were feeding dry hay. Turns out it's not. It's related to protein intake. The downside of feeding this extra protein is that it's expensive. One of those 200-pound tubs costs about $60. Is all this extra protein worth it? Well, I don't know. It's nice for my peace of mind to know that I'm giving my cattle a healthy diet. But the real proof in the pudding will be when calving season comes and we get to take a look at this year's calves compared to last year's calves. And also as we go through slaughter season and find out if our steers' dress weights increase because of the additional protein. So let's take this right back to the question I asked in the beginning. Do your cattle need supplemental minerals? The answer is most definitely yes, and they should be provided in loose form so that the cattle can get enough of them. Do your cattle need supplemental protein? The answer to that is probably. Life never seems to get any simpler. Here I was starting out a farm thinking all I needed to give my cattle in addition to forage was salt. Turns out there's a whole host of other things they need. I hope you've learned something from this video, and if you have any questions, I can try to help you out in the comments, although I'm still learning about all this stuff. Hope you enjoyed this video. Have a great day, and I'll see you next time.